Okay, buddy.
Do I have to take my
Welcome.
mask off?
Yeah, that's you. Whatever you want to do. All right, everybody. So, welcome to the first episode of Hold the Fuck Up. Okay, I'm your host, of course, James. Always give my opinion, Sean. That's exactly what I did. I gave my opinion on a little film called Mother of Monsters, and the movie didn't take kindly to that. So the big guns came out. A challenge was issued, and the challenge was accepted. So I am joined today by the writer and the director of Mom, Mother of Monsters, Tucia. Don't you ever fuck with my movie, Lyman. How are you doing today?
What's up, James? How are you? I actually thought that your review was hilarious, just for the record.
Oh, they can't let people know they were supposed to be fighting here.
Your review was horrific, and I can't believe you were so negative about my movie. Listen, man,
There.
I wish I could do an imitation. I wish I could do a good imitation of you reviewing my film, because it was hilarious.
Okay, just so everyone knows that there's not going to be a fight, because we're not here to promote violence, because that's what the film's about. We want to encourage safe and engaging interactions. So I would first start off with, now obviously we know that since the film does deal with, obviously violence and a shooting, a very tough subject. So what made you want to, obviously tell that story? And since it was a very tough film subject-wise, did you have any issues trying to get that film distributed, or what kind of obstacles did you come into?
Does that mean I can take my gloves off because we're not really going to fight? I'm going to leave them on. We might fight.
Well, I still got my hand sanitizer, so, I'm good.
Oh, hey,
Go ahead, put some on here.
When we did we had a theatrical premiere for Mom for the film, but it was canceled because of COVID. We opened on the exact same weekend that the entire city shut down. We opened on Friday the 13th, and we actually made for the theater. It's probably backwards there, but it's called Mom's Psychopathogen Killer, which is hand sanitizer that we made for the film.
Oh, that's I like that.
I'm hard. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, good, cool, we're on. So yes, the subject matter of the film is very tough, and it's sensitive. And I will say that it wasn't just in distribution that we had a hard time finding people who would acquire the film, but we actually had a really hard time funding the film. Because it's such a sensitive subject matter. And of course, as soon as you start to talk about, he's a psychopath, he may or may not have the ability to shoot up a school, people are like, oh no, we can't touch that. We can't touch school shootings. It's not about a school shooter though, right? I mean, you've seen the film. It's about the breakdown of communication within a kind of typical American family that has a propensity to produce a school shooter. It's much more complicated than just, he's a school shooter, he fits a certain profile. So, but because it was such a socially relevant topic, and because there were so many school shootings happening before coronavirus, I mean, I think kids are probably safer now at home than they are at school, which is really sad. We couldn't, I tried to take it to different studios, and they said no. They said it was too risky. They couldn't do it. And then afterwards, when we ended up raising all the money ourselves for the film to make it. And then when it came time to distribute it, people, I mean, listen, there were sales companies that would not even look at the screener because of the topic. You know what I mean? They wouldn't.
Yeah.
So we finally did find a distributor, Indie Rights, who, they were willing to take a risk, and they were willing to put something that was controversial out there. And listen, we get all kinds of reactions. We get lots of positive feedback, and we get lots of negative feedback. It's a controversial subject,
Right. No, it's definitely a good topic to have, because of course there's so many of these shootings, and every time there's one, we're all like, oh my God, I'm so sad. And then two weeks later, we're back to normal, not doing anything. We're only that no one's posing solutions to the problem. We just grieve every 2 2 weeks or so when the tragedy happens, and that's unfortunate. So that is kind of one of the reasons what drew me to watch this movie. When I was like, oh, I'm like, oh, it's out there. That's something that's not that I typically see, you know. And so that is kind of one of the reasons why I watched it, and of course the glorious rave reviews. But even though I didn't like the film, it's still a film that I'm glad that you did put out, because it does promote discussions, and I think ultimately that's what's most important is it can lead to some great discussions, and yeah, so I think so good job for sticking with it and putting it out there. So upon my first watch, I'll admit it was a little tough for me to get through. I wasn't paying attention as much as I should have. So that's why I did rewatch it, and even though I don't feel as strongly against it as I did before, but I sent you a few takeaways. So kind of what I was wanted to talk about that. So what I thought the film was about was Abby. Oh, just so everyone knows we're talking spoilers, just so everyone is aware. What I thought it was about was I think it's really about Abby and her not her not saying she couldn't stop Jerry because she was too young, but you're right, as you said, dealing with PTSD, and she sees a lot of signs in Jacob that is with the typical, I guess, the profile for like a shooter or psychopath, and I think that she was kind of struggling with how do I handle that while also dealing with my own personal issues relating to the subject, and when she was trying to get help, people were sort of dismissing his actions. They were trying to justify it, and I thought that was interesting. Am I kind of right in line with sort of that thinking, or?
Not only is it interesting, it's incredibly dangerous.
Right.
Because what happens is our system is failing kids, and our system is failing these families. And the kid who shot up, I don't like saying the names of the actual shooters because I think
Oh, absolutely not.
it inspires copycats. But the kid who shot up Parkland, the Parkland school, the Parkland High School,
Douglas.
Douglas
Douglas.
High.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had been reported dozens of times. He'd even been tipped off to the FBI. He had been the school. He'd been reported in the school. He'd been reported to family counseling, and no one intervened. Right?
Right.
The system failed him, and you have some cases where these kids, sadly, society is failing them first. Right? Their parents are failing them. Society is failing them, and I think what we have to do really is social emotional learning programs, implementing those in school, I think is huge, because it actually retrains your brain. It retrains you to understand how to manage your emotions, how to manage your kids' emotions, how to help your kids understand how to deal with real life issues, real life conflict, which they're not learning right now. And I think it's having a really, really dangerous effect. And what's happening is kids are going into their schools with AR-15s, and they're mowing classmates down, which is dangerous. Which is horrific. But in this case, for this film, Abby, who is the mom, has turned her son Jacob in to the authorities. Right? She has actually sought help. He's served something. You learn early in the film that he has served time in a diversion program, but he's outsmarted people, and he's outsmarted his therapists. And unfortunately, she is pushed to the point where she wants to figure out, okay, is my son going to shoot up his school? Is my son a psychopath? Is he capable of hurting or murdering somebody? And she takes it into her own hands, right? I don't recommend that, right? And I mean, you can see in the film, it's a psychological thriller, but you can see throughout the course of the film, obviously mom's got some issues too. And a lot of the moms of these real shooters do have issues. And I need to preface this with the fact that although this is a work of narrative fiction, the characters and the events and even some of the dialogue is borrowed from the manifestos and memoirs of real school shooters and their parents. So it's fiction, but it's based very much in truth. It's profiled after these families, after these kids, and that's what these kids are like.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. That's good. So it's like this. How much research did you do then into craft this? I assume you probably looked up a lot of these shootings, and was that hard to having to go through that and read those manifestos, to sort of see the psyche of the shooters or their families.
James, if this is going to be a fight, you can't say it was probably hard for you. You got to be like, but how much research did you do? You got to be on the video.
Okay, yeah. So
Come
how
on,
much
Tucia, how
research
much
did
really did you do?
yes? How much research did you really do on this?
Well, let me tell you, James. Um, I have a niece who lives in Connecticut, and she was in 2012. When the Sandy Hook Elementary School happened in 2012 in Connecticut, my niece almost went to that school. So when I saw that on the news, when I saw that a kid had gone in and blown away 20 elementary kids and 6 adults, it was 26 people in total. I had a panic attack, right? Because I thought, oh my God, is my niece in that classroom? Well, unfortunately, I think that we as a society get kind of trapped in that place where, oh, this is never going to happen to me. And when it does happen, yes, it's horrifying. And, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers don't fucking work for something like this, right? You got to be talking about this stuff. That's what works. So how do you talk about it? I'm not a parent, right? I don't have kids. I don't have a son. Well, I have siblings who have sons, and I have conversations with them about what it's like when they recognize signs in their kids that are, is this dangerous that my kid is playing this many hours of video games in his room? Not necessarily, but are you also talking with your kid? Are you also communicating with your kid and teaching him, interpersonal communication skills? Because that's what's actually dangerous. So anyway, to answer your question, when the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting happened in 2012, I did a lot of research, and I did not have a movie in my mind at that point. I wanted answers as to how this could happen. And the more I learned, the more I realized that there are no answers, right?
Right.
Meaning there are no simple answers. Oh, could it be, video games? Listen, Japan has a lot more revenue in video games than America ever has, and they're not, going into their schools and synagogues and theaters and blowing people away, right? Is it access to guns? Sure, we could have gun reform that at least limits the access of military grade weapons
Right.
getting in the hands of kids or in the wrong people. But I think it's much more complex than that. The more research I did, the more manifestos I read, the memoirs I read. I read a beautiful memoir by Sue Claybold. She was the mother of one of the Columbine shooters. The more I realized that we've got to be talking about this as much as possible, because us saying thoughts and prayers and, oh God, thank God it didn't happen in my school or to my kids, doesn't work, right? There's no solution to that. The solution is talking about it. And as a filmmaker, the way that I can contribute to that national dialogue is by making a movie about it. I did not make a movie. What's sad is that all of these issues have been boiled down to healthcare and gun reform, when it's much more complex than that. And it's become kind of a political divide, a very polarizing discussion that divides the right and the left. Well, it shouldn't be a political discussion. These are our kids that we're talking about, right? These are our communities. So what it should be is a ongoing conversation, right?
Right.
Well, how do you have an ongoing conversation? For me, I work in media, right? For me, that's making a movie about it. So that's what I did. I don't know if I answered your question. What was your
No,
question?
this sounds all nice and dandy. I think the issue for me with the movie, I mean, maybe it was the found footage thing. I don't think found footage works very well, and I was just thrown off a little bit by that, because like talking to you now, this is like great. Like I love this conversation. Very passionate about this and making change. But I just feel like the movie, maybe because there's probably a lot of research, and it just on the movie, I just don't think a lot of this came across during the movie. Like I said, I didn't find Jacob to be compelling, and I think that might be maybe a me issue, maybe a cultural thing, because most of these shooters don't look like me, and my mom would not, she would beat me to death. My mom she instilled that fear in me, and I knew to not misbehave or anything like that. And so maybe it's a cultural thing why I didn't really relate to kind of Jacob and all that, because I don't watch a lot of these films about, like our documentaries about shooters and stuff. So maybe I don't know, but I'm like, man, all she had to do was just do a good whooping to Jacob, and it would have been all over. But that's my mindset, and that's probably the wrong way of thinking. And most of the film, it has to deal with if you find Jacob compelling as a character, and I did not, and it could just be a me thing, but yeah. So,
are you ready? Are you ready?
Go ahead.
First of all, I think there's a couple really good questions that you just brought up. One of them being found footage, okay, which I'll cover quickly. Right now, I chose to do the film as a found footage film because right now, I think that the entire psyche of America is very fractured right now because we're used to toggling between Facebook videos and YouTube videos, and that is how we are intaking content, right? And that's become a very familiar space for us. So I wanted to make a film in that familiar space, but I didn't want to make it a classic found footage film. A lot of the found footage big successes, the Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, even Cloverfield, those are films that there's something paranormal involved, right? There's witches, there's ghosts, there's a big monster running through New York. I wanted to use that same format and not make it anything paranormal. I wanted to make it a psychological thriller. And I think the key to making a good found footage film is to give the person filming a really believable reason to be filming. And there is no better reason, at least in my mind, of why somebody would be filming in their own house, their own kid, unless they thought that kid was a danger to society, right? I think that's a really compelling reason for her to be using her own cameras, cell phone surveillance cameras, to figure out if her kid is capable of murder or not. I could go on about that, but I think the even more interesting point that you brought up is this is not how you would talk to your mom, right?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't be standing here today if I did.
Good for you and good for your mother. Unfortunately, kids are talking to their parents this way, and I think there's an argument to be made that maybe it happens more in white families. I don't know, but I have friends whose kids talk to their parents in a completely disrespectful way. And unfortunately, if you said in your review, she ought to grow a pair of balls. Sure. That's one way to look at it. But what if you can't? What if you don't know how to deal with that kid? What if that kid is now getting bigger and stronger than you are? How do you deal with it then? You go to your support system, right? You go to your mom, you go to your therapist. Well, they're failing her too, because they're saying, well, but you had that issue from the past with your brother, and maybe you're bringing that in and projecting it onto your son. Fair enough. And also we learned that she actually is doing some of that. It's a psychological thriller, so there has to be that roller coaster ride, right? That mental roller coaster ride. But here's the deal. I have noticed a lot of people on Instagram and Facebook who have said, and I'm quoting them, this is a white problem. This is a white problem. Are they right? White kids are the ones bringing military grade weapons into schools and shooting people. It is astronomically, the majority of them are white kids doing this. Somebody may be able to find one black kid who did it, but it's all white kids. It's young white males. Is it a white problem? Well, is it a white problem when a white kid is walking into a public school and shooting black kids and shooting Asians and shooting Hispanics as well as white kids? Is that still a white problem?
No.
Right. So my theory is, and this is why it always surprises me when I see some of those comments that I get, because I believe, in fact, there's a lot of research behind this, that one of the main reasons that kids are shooting up their schools, besides there being some ignorance and their bodies being flooded with testosterone and hormones, is because there are white supremacy leanings in what they're reading, what they're seeing, what they're doing, what they're talking about with their friends. That's not just a white problem, because they make it more than a white problem, right? Now we're talking about they're even in Connecticut, even in these white, suburban schools, there are black kids that are being shot in these schools. These shooters do shoot all races. You know, once they get in their head, they're gonna shoot everybody, right? Well, it's not a coincidence. If you do, because I've done a lot of research, if you look at the manifestos, the writings, the memoirs of what these kids are talking about or not talking about before they do these shootings, it's absolutely mind-blowing that almost all of them, I think there was only one that I couldn't quite figure out, where it comes from racism. It comes from racism. It's not a coincidence that the two boys who shot up Columbine on 4/20 on Hitler's birthday, right? That's not a coincidence. So we need to retrain people's minds, and it's not just about mental illness or guns or video games. It's about a fundamental breakdown of communication between a parent and a child and a society and that family that we need to address. And for me, this is the way that I could address it. This is the way that I could try to sear it into people's consciousnesses that, listen, there's a problem here that we need to keep talking about it, because if we're not talking about it, then we're not solving it. And if we're not solving it and we're not doing enough about it, then we're condoning these acts of violence, you know?
Yes. Wow. See, now you made me almost made me change my opinion. Very well spoken, but I'm gonna still stick to my guns here. Maybe it's the way the film was just structured. I don't know. So like, there's a lot of great individual moments, but when you piece the whole movie together, I just overall, so I felt disappointed, and to hear people, on the edge of their seat. I wanted to be on the edge of my seat. I wanted to. That's why I brought that up. And I was like, oh man, I'm just not feeling the edge of being on the edge of the seat. And maybe it's my fault for just having such high expectations, but usually I don't follow people's opinions. But if I see a mass majority of people, they're like, oh, this is like so great, and I wanted to be, and so I was disappointed. Maybe that's why my frustration came through. Those were the most passionate reviews, and I'm really the most passionate ones, the ones I either really believed in or it should have been much better. So I think you should take pride in that it was one of my most passionate reviews. So,
are you ready?
I am. Go ahead. You're getting defeated here, but go ahead.
Oh, really? We'll let the audience decide. By the way, we can see your comments. We're not really reading your comments, but hi, Tom.
Yeah, I think people are just chatting. Yeah,
hi, Wendy. Hi, Karina. Everyone's here. Karina was on the edge of her seat. She actually fell off. Just for the record.
see, Karina, I wanted to fall off. I did.
Well, here's my response to that. You review predominantly you review horror films, right? You like horror films. I mean, most of the films on your feed are horror films, right?
They are. I review pretty much everything. Like, there's anything that's out. Horror is my favorite genre. Horror and romance, actually, kind of weird. They're both my favorite genres, so I am more harder on those. But I do like movies like The Witch, which a lot of people didn't like.
I love The Witch.
It Comes at Night. I love that. And It Follows are one of my favorite ones. So I do like
go ahead. Follows. Yeah, the cinematography in It Follows was tremendous. That scene where they're in the chair spinning around and it's like all the graffiti around them. I mean, come on, that film was incredible. The Witch is actually one of my favorite horror films. So see,
I knew I liked you. I knew I liked you.
That's a good film. That's a deep, critical thinking film that's complex and anyway. So you like horror. Horror's your favorite genre, you just said. Okay, so horror films are almost designed to, they create feelings of anxiety, of fear, right? Well, those kinds of feelings give us a boost of adrenaline. That's what they do. And what happens when you get a boost of adrenaline is you keep coming back for more. So people, I think that's one of the reasons why horror films have such huge built-in fan base, is people are addicted to fear, right? It gives them a rise, it gives them a rush. It's more interesting, it's more thrilling than sitting on their couch and watching a documentary. I think that we have been our brains have been rewired to respond to a certain kind of stimulus, and anything that produces, shots of adrenaline, we're going to respond to. And I think that people associate, and I do think that you have to consider that your mind has been lassoed into a certain kind of experience when you are watching a horror film. And a lot of times what happens in horror is there's jump scares, right? There's cheap jump scares, and there's blood, and there's gore, and that gets us, and we want to watch it. We're like, oh my God, this is so horrible. I can't look away, right? That's not what this film is. This film is a psychological thriller that is designed to make you think. So yeah, is there some blood? Is there a few jump scares? Yes, there are. But that's not the purpose of this film. I mean, I think there's a reason why films like Get Out and films like Parasite are winning Academy Awards right now. And that is because they are nesting socially relevant themes into a horror film, right? So they're getting that younger audience, they're getting that audience that likes that adrenaline boost, but it's also, they're walking away thinking about things. Get Out, there's some, racism themes in that, obviously. For Parasite, there's classism, right? And I think that a lot of times people are watching horror films just to get that shot, where you're not going to get that shot in this film. It is going to require you to think. It's going to require you to pay attention. And that's almost a different genre of film. And I think you got trapped by that. That's what I think.
I'll admit, probably the first time watching it, I did. It's the second time I was like, okay, I'm gonna get my favorite candy in the world, which is red vines. I'm gonna get that gets me in a good mood. And I did pick up on more things the second time than I did the first time. But just the moments that were still just, I thought, not entertaining enough. It just came back to, I just didn't think that Jacob was a compelling character. And I understand what you're trying to do. Like when you showed him, with having a bearded dragon named Adolf and having like the little gas mask or swastika, there's a lot of visual cues. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I just never seen the physicality in my mind that really made him, to me, be like someone that's a threat. But again, that does go back to what you're saying about that's kind of what the profile is. I don't really research all this. I don't really know.
Right.
But just
fair enough.
The way the film worked out, that just didn't work for me. I thought Abby was fantastic. She did great. And I think the best moments were when she was just kind of by herself. That's when I was most engaged, because I believed her character. I believed the struggle that she was going with, but I didn't believe the struggle that Jacob was. And I wish I did. Just even watching it, I tried watching it again today. I'm like, what? Even though I kind of know, and I picked up on more things. I picked up a few more things. It just didn't work, for me. But it's still again, it's still a great movie in terms of like a need to be discussion. But I just want to be my edge of my seat, and then I wasn't. And
Okay, you're bringing up a few things again there. First of all, I actually really appreciate you being candid about this and being outspoken about it. I think it's honorable, and I am honored to be able to talk with you about it, because I think that if you're feeling these feelings, there's got to be other people feeling them too, right? Right. They're valid. It's valid takeaway. Listen, this is a film, like I told you, which is modeled after real school shooters and their parents, right? So, I think that our brains also like to, we appreciate that kind of format that is the classic Hollywood movie kind of format. The good guys are good guys, the bad guys are bad guys, and it's usually wrapped up at the end and the good guy wins. That's not the kind of film I'm interested in making. It's not even the kind of film I'm interested in watching. This character, Jacob, is built off of real, everything about him is borrowed from these real school shooters. Real school shooters typically are not likable, okay? Do you think the kid who shot up Sandy Hook was a gregarious, charming kind of dude? I don't think so. Do you think the kid who shot up, Columbine or Parkland or any of these Dayton shootings or any of these synagogue shootings? No, these are not people that we are going to naturally be rooting for. I think what will surprise you, because it surprised me, is that during the first, because we screened this movie, we had lots of internal screenings during the edit phase, so we could figure out what are people responding to, what do we need to change. 85% of the people were rooting for Jacob, the son, the psychopath. And that was really shocking to me, because they were saying, we filled out questionnaires. I had people fill out questionnaires. And they were saying, his mother is obsessive. His mother is causing him to do this. His mother's barely feeding him. And I realized that I had to make Jacob I worked very hard with the producers and editors to make Jacob less likable because people were rooting for him too much. And you know, that's how we ended up incorporating all of that childhood footage into the film, where we used, you know, documentary footage of him misbehaving from a young age. And that really is the actor. That really is Bailey Edwards as a young kid. We just dubbed in horrific lines from his mother to make it seem, you know, that he was a psychopath.
Right.
But real psychopaths aren't necessarily likable. And I think in this film, you know, we cast Bailey Edwards, who's an incredibly talented actor who was able to be somewhat charming enough where a lot of people were actually rooting for him. And yet at the same time, he had that, you know, incredible ability to just change his facial expressions. Anyone who's tuning in now is wondering why I'm wearing gloves. It's because I didn't have boxing gloves, and this is supposed to be a face-off, so I'm still wearing my gloves. Anyway, I think he did a terrific job of making people like him, and at the same time having that, you know, intense ability to change his entire persona. So suddenly he's smiling, like, okay, mom, and then he drops down into that, cool, like, we good? You know, he has that ability, that range, which to me was just, you know, mystifying to watch because he truly embodied the essence of that character. And was he compelling? A lot of people do think so. Was he likable? Was he a typical film protagonist? No, and he wasn't meant to be. He was meant to, you know, we painted a portrait of what these kids may actually be like, you know, and they're not necessarily likable.
Damn, those are very, very good points. Right, the fact that he wasn't compelling, that's actually in his favor because, right, I mean, that's sort of the profile that you mentioned. But there was some great moments. They did, like the last 20 minutes of the movie, I thought were fantastic. When he was sort of doing the full psychological and mental torture on his mom, I thought that was definitely brilliant. So I know that he definitely has the range, you know, of an actor. I was like, wow, that's very. He was able to snap like this from, you know, kind of smile like you said to being all, you know, crazy, and I was like, that's very good. And I kind of like this. And towards the end, when I think Abby was. That's what kind of like is that Abby, in my opinion, was. I was saying earlier was that most of this is kind of like her psychological, you know, dealing with PTSD from Jerry. You said that's wrong, but it's good that there are different interpretations, you know, of the film. Because second time is when I call it. First time I was just more like, okay, this is not really for me. And then I was like, you know what? Let me watch it again. I know there's some things in here that I'm missing. And so I also to pick up on the stuff with the psychiatrist, how she, you know, he was, how they're both mentioning like, oh, back when Jerry did this, and even the mom was referencing that. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe it has a little bit to do with Jerry as well, and you know, seeing the signs with Jacob, and the fact that towards the end when you had the visual, I was like, oh man, Jacob, that's so good that she sort of had that. Her dream is coming to realization that of her hanging herself and all that.
Right.
I thought that was brilliant.
See, there's your critical mind working. There's your critical mind working right there. That you connected the fact that this recurring nightmare that she's having is exactly what, you know, Jacob uses to turn the tables and to stage her worst fears, because he has now inside information on what makes her tick and what makes her heart rate go up and what scares her. And now he's using that against her. You know, some people miss that. You pick up on that. I might be changing my mind about you. I'll still fight you, but I might be changing my mind about your critical assessment of this film.
Yeah. So my reviews are not meant to be, you know, really critical. I think there's a lot of people that do the critical aspect. I do off emotion. And you know, I should. That's what kind of want to do this. I do have a critical mind. I just like to have fun with my reviews, you know.
Oh, your reviews are hilarious.
Yeah,
I think it's funny that you're like, oh, Tucia Lyman did not take kindly to my review. When a couple of people tagged me with your review, and they were like, oh my God, this guy is way off. He's not getting your film. He's got a bunch of followers. People aren't going to watch your movie because of it. He needs to understand that this is an incredible movie. And I was like, no, it's fine. Well, I got enough people telling me about it that I went to your. So I actually already watched some of your reviews because you have some of the best, most creative ways of reviewing films that always crack me up. So then I watched it and I thought your review was really funny. I mean, I thought it was a tiny bit harsh. But
I
I
apologize.
took that as you were not in the right headspace to watch that film, to watch my film. But I will say, how many times have you seen it now?
Two times now. So I did see
Oh,
it two
only two, only
times.
two. Okay, okay.
Yeah, only two. Like I said, there's just too many moments for me that are too slow. If I was in a theater, I could probably watch it and dive more into it. But being at home, and if there's not everything, if there's those slow moments to me, I start kind of wandering off. But the second time, I was okay. Let me sit through and watch it. It's still hard for me to get through it, but I was able to pick up again. I was able to pick up on more things the second time I watched it than the first time. So if I was to redo it, I wouldn't be as harsh. I still wouldn't. They say, oh, it's best horror movie, but I would be less harsh, but I don't do redo, so
Let me ask
it
you this,
is what it is. Yeah.
James. Let me ask you this.
Yes.
Do you watch found footage films? Do you have some found footage films that blew your mind that you were like, oh my god, this is amazing?
I have film that I defend is As Above, So Below. A lot of people didn't like that movie. I actually liked As Above, So Below. It worked for me. I thought that film worked for me. A lot of people actually hated that movie. So that's one of the movies that I will always defend. I thought The Blair Witch was good, the first Paranormal. Other than that, a lot of these other horror movies, like Paranormal 4, it just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to tell a found footage story because it's been done so many times. And there needs to be a reason for them recording. I understand why.
It's a relatively new subgenre, just done so many times. I mean, the first time a found footage film was done, most people think it was the Blair Witch Project, which was in, I don't know, 1999 or something. But the first time it was ever done, I think, was in 1980, which was the cannibal film, the Holocaust cannibal film, which was about the group of anthropologists that went to the Amazon jungle and tried to find these lost filmmakers. It's a horrific movie. I'm not recommending it. But found footage is a relatively new genre. So it's interesting to me when people say, oh, it's been done so many times. Really? Has drama been done too many times? Has comedy been done too many times?
That's man. Good points. Good points. I guess it's been done lots recently is probably the better term I should say, with all the paranormals. Again, I understand why she was recording, so I don't have a problem with that. I just didn't. I don't know. Maybe it just didn't work for me, and that's the beauty about film being subjective. Because I love, I said, As Above, So Below. I'll defend Kristen Stewart movies to to the day I die. But I just really want to like this one, and that's why I was hurt. That's why I was so sad. That's why my review was so harsh. Was I didn't feel this way about it as I probably should, and I shouldn't let that go. But it is
No,
what it is.
we wouldn't be here if you weren't straight about it. So I actually appreciate you being. I appreciate that you didn't like it. When you watch films, do you have your cell phone on? Do you have your iPad on? Are you sneaking a peek at something else while you're watching?
No, usually I watch them in theaters, so this is sort of new for me being at home. This is why I don't like watching movies at home. Usually I'm in theater
Yeah.
before, of course, in old times, the old theaters was concepts. I was there every weekend, no matter if it's big blockbusters, small indie. So I would love to have watched this at a theater because I'm in theaters, my phone's completely off. So
Yeah.
I think it depends on the setting. To watch it at home, it's the distractions and yeah, so I think that's probably hurt it was I just wasn't, watching it. It's hard for me to say I'm just gonna turn my phone off because it's just I know I'm at home. So let me go and pop in here real quick. Let me go and walk around and that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. Here's the deal, James. If you're going to be a famous film critic, which you could be because you have such a unique style, you cannot let yourself get distracted when you're watching a film, because I think there was you said something about how between the time of the therapist call in the film and the time that she wakes up surrounded by her own cameras and, being tortured by her son, spoiler alert, that you weren't interested, that it was a little boring to you. I bet there's a lot of stuff that you missed during that time because you have a natural aversion to found footage films, which is not uncommon. And because you were looking for some of those thrills that horror films give you. And a thriller, a psychological thriller, is a subgenre of horror, right? And a found footage is a subgenre of that, right? So we're talking subgenre, which
Right.
is a perfect opportunity for your brain to tune out for a minute. Well, you're not alone, right? There's a lot of people's brains who are going to tune out. Do you have any idea what the rubber band snaps were through the first 2/3 of the film.
I heard him, but I didn't really connect it and really until you kind of mentioned it. That's what I wanted to also talk about, and of course also about her, her hand situation. I noticed the gloves she was mainly wearing out in public, so I'm not sure if she has some kind of allergy or if she's getting abused. I don't know. I understand why mainly when she's in public she would wear them, but at home you know see her wear them, and I'm not sure what exactly was causing. Was she self harming herself? Was it a disease? I don't really know kind of what was her deal with her hands. So you can lighten me on what those were.
Or you could just watch the movie again. I mean, 3 times could be a charm.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. I'm getting distracted by myself. We all get distracted. We all have the propensity to get distracted by some of these great comments. So Spooky Bands. Oh, Spooky Bands did the music for our film, by the way. That's Salvatore Siciliano. He says, I want James to review my life.
Oh, are you sure about that?
Yeah, he could be onto something there. There's some really funny comments here, actually. So listen, there's a lot to miss in this movie, and I think that's why some of the film critics are calling it an instant cult classic, is because you can watch it again and again and you get something different each time. And it's interesting, they're having some face-offs, some watch-offs on our Facebook pages where somebody's watching it 7 times and someone says, oh, I watched it 8 times and I got this, did you see that? And they're like, oh, I didn't. I'm going to watch it again, and it's entertaining to me. I don't think you need to watch this film 7 or 8 times. I don't even.
But you would like that, though, right?
I'm yeah, of course. As a filmmaker, I'm honored. But I think if you're paying a lot of attention, you really only need to see the film twice. And my distributor will probably call me after this and say, I can't believe you're only telling people to watch your film twice. I mean, once. I think you only need to watch it 1 time if you're truly paying attention. There's a lot of layers, but you cannot be watching, a YouTube video on the side or checking your Instagram or looking at something else while you're watching this film, or you will miss it. You asked me about the rubber band snaps. Throughout the first, in found footage films, a lot of time the question is, and for people who are just tuning in, I'm wearing gloves because I didn't have boxing gloves, and this was supposed to be a boxing match. So this is me boxing. In a found footage film, the big question that you're often asking is, okay, who's watching this footage, right? The Blair Witch Project. Who is watching this footage of all these kids trying to hunt down a witch in the woods, right?
Right.
In this film, hopefully people are asking who is watching this footage, and we give a lot of audio cues throughout where we have people, we the sound of somebody opening chips, the sound of somebody sending a text message, and then we have 18 audio cues, and they're easy to miss. That's why there's 18 and not 2, of a rubber band being snapped. You hear this, you hear in the film, and you don't know what that is, and you're not supposed to. Well, if you pay attention to all of those little clips where Jacob
who's not paying attention?
If you pay extra attention to all of those videos, you'll see Jacob when he's with his friend Lily out in the street. He's always snapping a rubber band. He snaps that old guy with the rubber band, right?
Yes.
And then, a third or 2/3 of the way through the film, you realize that when he actually spots the spy cameras and realizes that his own mother, has been spying on him this entire time, and you see him go into his mother's room, and then you see him watch this montage of fast clips, which are a lot of clips that we've already seen, and then it cuts to him through the camera of his laptop, and he's sitting there snapping a rubber band, and you hopefully, the attentive viewer, will realize that rubber band sound all along is him watching all of those clips from the beginning. That's what it is. And of course he has that, Bailey Edwards is so tremendous. He has that moment where he looks up into the camera of the laptop that he's watching them on, and he realizes his entire life has been watched and spied on. He takes that tape off his finger and he puts it over the lens.
That was a good scene. I'm not gonna lie. That was a scene I paid attention.
Yeah.
That was a good moment.
I get goosebumps still, and I've seen it 340 times.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
So that is the rubber band. It's an audio cue to help you understand who might be watching this film, at least the first, 2/3 of it. And that's and it's Jacob, and that's scary. It's scary that it's him watching his mother spy on him when you know that he has a bad temper and he's unstable, right?
Right.
And then the mother's gloves.
Yeah. Yes, mother's glove. I say you're make me change my mind. So I think if I did see this in theaters, I probably definitely would have paid attention to all this, and maybe that's my own fault. But no, I definitely like fact about this discussion. No matter what you do going forward, I'm definitely going to keep my eye on it because I like movies that do have a lot of these visual things, and I usually accuse other people of missing these visual things, and here I am missing a lot of these things, but. I do appreciate your filmmaking. So now I know all this. First watch, I never caught any of this, and I was like, oh, so that's definitely good. So I would definitely, no matter what you do going forward, I'm always gonna remember now. Like there's gonna be something hidden in here. I need to figure out, but hopefully it will be in theaters, so I can watch it. But if not going forward, I need this is a lesson for me that no matter what I'm doing, where I'm watching a movie, I need to just well pay attention. Don't any distraction. Try my best to do that in this new world. Since we'll probably be in this new world for a while, I have enough time to do that. But yeah, so
Well,
her
but
mother's gloves. Yeah, go ahead.
the truth is that most people, when they watch films or show, are doing other things, right? They're on
Right.
their cell phones, they're on their iPads. So that's no slight on you. I even do it myself. You know what I mean? I know if something's good, whether or not I'm going to play chess or poker online. That's my barometer of if a show is really entertaining.
Right.
So we're all guilty of it, right? As a film critic, you can't do that. As a film critic, you have to watch it. You have to pay attention because you're representing something where there's a lot of people tuning into your opinion. Or if you didn't think it was interesting and you're on your iPhone, you gotta use that as a caveat. You gotta let people know that because you have to give them an out because you have a lot of followers, right? So you have a lot
Right.
of people that are like, this guy's funny. This guy gives great film reviews. I mean, a lot of them are negative. I know on your Instagram page, I said, "Hey, haters gonna hate. This is a shtick. It's no big deal." But I've also seen some very positive reviews from you as well, and I know that your positive reviews get even more likes and followers. But as a film critic, I do think it's important to pay attention from the beginning to the end, or watch it twice even before you post.
I always consider myself not to be a film critic, but right, I should do that. I accuse other people of doing that, and then here I am, not doing that. So it's a little. That's definitely that one hurts. That one hurts. So I need
But you
to.
all, sorry. Oh yeah. Was that a knockout? Was that a
That,
knockout?
that
Did you
was
just
that
knock me
that
out?
that does hurt. I'm becoming what I'm accusing people of, and I try not to do that. But yeah.
But
So
listen,
your movie got me.
well, your reviews are more entertaining than most reviews I see. The fact that they're on video, they're in your car, that your personality is so big and it's funny and it's candid, it's entertaining. Listen, it doesn't personally offend me that you didn't like the film. I think that you might like it more now, but I enjoy you and I'll always be a fan, whether or not you like my movies.
Right. Yeah, I like how we pumped this up via fight. Everyone knows we were planning this, but I'm glad you came on. But yeah, so her mother's glove. That's the last thing. I'm like, I don't really. I said I'm not sure. Does she have it? Is it a disease? Is it she been abused? Is it self something? Like what is the answer there or the discussion kind of
So that
about
so
that?
so so the answer there is that, and I hope everyone watching has seen the film. If you haven't, turn this off and go watch the fucking film. Um, the
Watch it
story
4 times, please.
you only need to watch it once, but if you didn't get it, watch it twice. So the mom has eczema. In the beginning of the film, we don't reveal that, right? We just show her in the gloves. She's got the white gloves inside. She's got the green gloves outside.
Right. Yes.
She has eczema. Then we slowly start to reveal, if you're paying a lot of attention, that she's putting cream on her hands, that she's putting the
Yep.
white gloves over the hands. So obviously she has eczema. There's even a couple lines of dialogue about it, like when he finds the package. She says, "Oh, it must be my eczema cream." So
Right.
there's a couple lines, easy to miss. I get it. There's a few of them, just in case you missed one or two, but it is easy to miss still. And then through the course of the film, you notice that the spots in our hand are getting more and more red, and we had 18 different versions of red on her hands and red under her eyes, by the way,
Right.
where we see her hands get worse and worse. And then we hear a couple lines from Jacob during the film where he says things like, "Hey, Ma, you should really be wearing your mitts." Why would he say
Yeah.
that? Why does he care if his mother is wearing his mitts or not? He doesn't. Kids don't care about that kind of shit. He cares. Why does he care? I don't know. Interesting. Maybe I'll just put that in my brain for a second and then forget about it. And then I'll be reminded again towards the end of the movie when she's, spoiler alert, where she's locked in the closet, right? And
Right.
she's not wearing her gloves and she doesn't have her cream and she's locked in the closet for a number of days and her hands start to heal.
Yes, I know that. I
And she
noticed that.
says to him, she asks him, she says, look at my hands. They're healing. What were you putting in my gloves? What were you putting in my mitts?
And he like
And he just
gives
hit.
a smirky smile, never gets an answer. I'm like,
Yeah,
come on,
exactly.
kid.
See? So it registered in your brain, right? He gives a smirky, that kind of,
Would you like
scary
to know?
signature.
Yeah, yeah.
But much more subtle than that. And if you think about, well, what, she basically said, what were you putting in my gloves? Well, if you think about the kinds of chemicals that he was stealing from his science class, right? When he got, detention, and mom goes into the science class and asks, why they formaldehyde for the lizards that he was stitching up and killing, stitching up and jarring.
Which, by the way, hurt my feeling. As a reptile guy, that hurt. He couldn't use
Okay,
like dogs or
tell you,
cats. Sorry, dogs or cat people, but
let me tell you, we had to find this lizard, the live lizard, right? And we went on Craigslist and we adopted lizards who people weren't taking care of, and we got this lizard. And the producers, Austin and Elaine, who are incredible producers, still have this lizard. And he's big now. He's what is he called? The dragon,
a bearded dragon.
bearded dragon. They still have this lizard, and it's the light of their life. They built this huge aquarium for it, and this lizard is gigantic now, and they give it baths and everything. And so, listen, we obviously know animals were harmed during the making of this film. In fact, the animals became everyone's pets. There's actually very funny on Twitter right now. There's a very funny behind-the-scenes clip where we talk about where Jacob, Bailey, and Melinda, who play Jacob and Abby, talk about a blooper with the rats when they had we had fake rats, obviously, because there's a scene where something negative happens to a rat. Well, of course we're not going to hurt animals. We're huge. I'm an animal rights activist, so in the behind the scenes scene, the blooper, they talk about what happened when there was a snafu where the rat actually escaped during one of the scenes, and our stunt coordinator and animal wrangler had to actually grab the rat in the middle of the scene. It was very funny. The rats were a pain in the butt. I'm not going to lie. They peed, the actors and the crew constantly were holding them and petting them and loving them. And these rats were in seventh heaven, but they peed and shit over everything. So they peed on Belinda's shirt. They peed on her backup shirt. They peed on the couch. We were constantly trying to clean up after these damn rats.
Oh, trust me, I know how rats and mice are. That's what I do for my day job. I work with mice and rats, so I know how frustrating and sometimes lovely they can be.
They're cute. This lizard is unbelievably adorable.
Okay, I'm glad it makes you feel better that no animals were harmed.
Of course
Like
not.
I think they were harmed. I think they were harmed. I'm kidding.
Oh, you think they were harmed? Oh, we're gonna find.
No, I didn't. I didn't think they were harmed. I know you wouldn't do
okay.
that. I know you wouldn't. I'm just teasing.
Take these gloves off.
I'm just teasing. This has been So what's your next like project, or what's next for you? I'm actually really curious now. Now I'm really curious again to review your next movie. So what was there something that you please reveal, or are you working on anything, or what's kind of going on next for you?
Right now we're all kind of stuck in our house. We're not doing a whole lot of anything. I am working on a A&E series right now, so we're part-time remote, but that is taking up a lot of my time. And then I have several other films in the cooker, in the pipeline, that I want to do. I wrote a film right before I wrote Mom called Half Breed, which won the International Page Screenwriting Awards in the category of horror. It was one of the top 3. So I want to look at that again. Making a film is tough. Making a film is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into it. A lot more passion and personal prowess goes into it than with television. Of course, television is what pays the bills. I have a film professor, a documentary film professor named Sally Rubin, who when she teaches documentary class, she basically says at the top of each semester, she says, how many people in here want to make movies and want to be able to tell your stories through this craft? And everyone raises their hand. And then she says, how many people in here want to make a career out of being a television producer? And 3 people raise their hand. And she's like, all right, all of you 85 people, you're going to be working for those 3 people. And that's what happens. That's what happens is,
right.
It's television where it's more consistent work and and you get paid more. Basically, film, it's a lot of personal investment, and so there's a lot of in between movies, I'm basically working on television shows, and so I'll continue to do that. But the moment this next A&E series wraps, I'll probably go back to a couple other horror / thriller films that have been keeping me awake at night.
I'll make sure I pay very close attention to those full detail. Make sure I watch it 2 or 3 times before I give a review. I'll make sure I do that for you. You earn that. So.
Thank you. Just watch it once, but you got to put your phone down. That's it. It's my only requirement.
I promise. So if you,
okay,
I
cool.
think I'm voting you. You won. You're now the champion. Okay, you won this battle.
Thank you, James.
This has been fun. This has definitely been fun. I'm glad that we're able to do this. I'm glad my negative review turned to a positive. but yeah, I'm glad. Like, definitely got to see sort of your process and all that. And I wish, like I said, I didn't know the film was that deep initially. And as I said, definitely have a good visionary eye, and that's actually stuff I look for, which is odd that I didn't see it in this film. So I got stumped. But yeah, so I want to thank you for coming on here.
Look at all your viewers telling you how awesome you are.
Oh, I feel that's so many viewers as well.
Says Joe Venice.
Yeah. No, that's what everyone's tuning in. That's what this was really about. I wanted to just come on and just sort of talk about the film and things that I had issues with, and there were some great moments. I'm glad you didn't take my review personally. I hope no one ever does, take it personally, because I do yell at the characters, but it's the characters, not the actors or actors playing those characters. I want people to know that. So people are like, oh, why are you so mean to people? I said, I'm mean to the character, and not that. No offense to anybody personally. Never that. So glad.
Yeah, I didn't take it personally. I really didn't, and I thought it was pretty stellar. And it was a stand-up thing for you to do, to invite me to a challenge to talk about it. I thought that was awesome, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so
we're never going to fight again. This is like the end of our fighting relationship.
Well, we'll see that next. Maybe I should check out the A&E series. Maybe check that out too. Is that like horror too? Is it what's the A&E series about that you're working on?
Oh, I can't. Okay,
I got you.
I had to sign
I understand completely. I'll look forward to it.
You will learn soon. I will let you know.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
All right, James. Thank you, man. That was a really fun fight.
It was. I know. Sorry to disappoint everybody. I know. Near do I. It's going hand sanitizer. Didn't even use my bottle. Look at that. Didn't even use it.
We can have a hand sanitizer off.
Yeah, there it goes. Let me go ahead and gotta stay safe out there. But yeah, brother. So hopefully, what have you been doing this whole, I guess, quarantine besides just staying at home? Have you been watching any like movie, TV shows, or what?
Yeah, I've been watching shows at night. Mostly during the day, I'm working, and I'm working on my projects. I'm doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of we do newsletters and all kinds of stuff for the movie. But yeah, we're watching shows. We're watching some really jacked up shows like Tiger King, which is fun but embarrassing as a society. Yeah, watching TV and movies, and I just watched The Witch again not too long ago, and I love that. Have you seen Midsommar?
I have seen Midsommar, and I was not a fan of Midsommar either. A lot of issues with that. The film I saw recently that I absolutely love horror-wise was The Lodge. That film I absolutely loved. A lot of people had issues with The Lodge. Yes. It's a film I absolutely loved. It's like first half is kind of there's one twist in it, and it changed the whole landscape for me. But
so you actually gave a positive review of The Lodge?
I did. Best horror film I ever seen.